Actually, it kind of feels cold in here today. That cloudiness. I wish it would rain. You know. Surgery. Either way, I think it they're saying whether they did surgery or not. I look at that way. Good way to do it. We did get 100 more of those Bibles. All right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody here that can be here. Yeah. If you're not there, you couldn't be here. You're not. All right. They gave me that when I bought some lawnmower blades. So you spend enough money, they'll just give you free. Yeah. But it wasn't as much money as Matt spent to get his hat. So. I farmed at John. I shot at John Deere for 20 years before I got my first hat. Oh wow. We needed to go see him then. Because they know I have a Kubota tractor. They're like, oh, they know you got. No, he's not. He doesn't really support us. Well, you gotta take it out. All right, he wants to show off his hook. You got your hook on it? He's got it. You're a real bad man. I bought him one of those fish hook hat things, and so he's pretty excited. All right, turn to page 198. Page 198. We'll sing the first one. His face is often is the body of every day. While I sit and learn at Jesus' feet, I'm free as free indeed. It is joy unspeakable, full of glory, full of glory, full of glory. It is joy course, for the Caucus Town this morning. So if you didn't know, but of course, after the surgery on her mom, they haven't really been seeing much brain activity. And after all this time, today they're going to take her off oxygen. So just be in prayer. They don't expect her to make it. So just be in prayer for the family. It's going to be a tough day for them. And be in prayer also for Cody and Evan. Of course, the baby was born and everything seemed to go well. She got there in like 30 minutes, had the baby. But that means no epidermal, so that's probably not a good part about it. You know, what happened in the good old days, my mom, whenever she had me, they just put her to sleep. Like back then, they just put people to sleep when they had babies. And I'm sure y'all would like to go back to that, right? Just be like, wake up, oh, I had a baby. You know, but they seem to be doing good. I guess probably get out today if everything's okay sometime today. So that's good to hear. And we got blessed. Miss Ruth, of course, brought back all the decorations for VBS, and they're in the back. And we're going to, this week, start getting them up and everything. But also, they're able to pick up, we got 100 more Bibles to give away. So I'm excited about that. We are going to give some to our teachers, so they'll have a new Bible. But we've got some in the prison we need to give to, and there'll be others. But most of these new ones are different. Now, this one, they have the index, but instead of gold on the side, they're silver. Of course, they're the same exact one. But I know from your seat, you may not be able to tell, but that is not black. That is dark blue. Okay, so who thinks it looks black?
Heavenly Highway blue.
It's the Heavenly Highway blue. Yeah, so you can't tell. If you put it up against something black, you can tell it's dark blue. But if you just, who thinks it looks black? Be honest. You don't have to lie in church, okay? But honestly, if you put it up against something black, you can tell it's blue. But it's so dark, you can just barely tell. I kind of like it. I like the silver edges. That's pretty neat. And then the other ones are burgundy. And so those are nice. I've always liked the dark burgundy color. It's crazy because the preacher up there, he said basically what happened, the reason they have these Bibles, is someone came to him and wanted them to give away Bibles. They said, we'd like some Bibles to be given away. We'd like them to not be cheap Bibles. And they specifically wanted these in the boxes like this because they said the good thing about the box is if someone gets it and doesn't really use it, it's going to stay in pretty good shape. Because they'll probably keep it in this box. And I agree with that. I think most people will. Like if you gave them this, I gave my two cousins when I went fishing with them in Dumas, I gave them each a Bible. And even if they don't use it, they might just keep it in this box like this and put it on a shelf, and it'll keep it in pretty good shape. They said we'd like to give good Bibles away. They ordered these from Sword of the Lord, and here's the reason I have trouble getting them in so quick. Because the person who wanted to give away Bibles, they didn't just say, hey, I want you to give away Bibles. They put some money with it. And they said, I'd like you to buy $100,000 worth of Bibles. And gave them $100,000. So they made an order to Sword of the Lord for $100,000 worth of Bibles. So they're having a hard time keeping up. Okay? You can imagine, right? So they just went, and they were glad to hear some of the stories we told them about the Bibles in the prison. We got them in this prison. Caleb gave those out of that prison. And just different people we already given Bibles to. They were just so excited to hear that. And he shared a lot of good stories with Miss Ruth and Brother Fred. But isn't that crazy? Somebody said, hey, 100,000. And you know, well, I like what he said. He's a real preacher, right? He said, and you would think that nobody would have a problem with you giving away Bibles, right? Like no Christian would cause a fuss about you giving away Bibles. And he said, but somehow they did. And he said he had some Christians who were like, those Bibles are way too nice just to give away. You know? And I was just like, that's the person, if someone said that to me, I would probably slap them in the face. Okay, I'm just saying. Those Bibles are too nice to give away. I'm like, hey, no Bible's too nice to give away. Look, you give a Bible away like this, it may, 100 years from now, it may do something we don't know about. Wouldn't you agree? Because it's a good Bible. It's in good shape. And I know some of these we give, I know those aren't going to last because they're cheaper. And you can see some of them get tore up or put put somewhere. But something like this, I think is going to stand some time. And you may give it to a guy, and he may do nothing with it, but his kids might get it. It might be in his shelf, and his kids might get it. His grandkids might get it. And they're tickled. Somebody called one time, and they had got one of their Bibles. They said, yeah, I went somewhere, and they had one of your Bibles there, and they were at a yard sale, and it was $2. And so he bought it, but he came to church because he bought it at the yard sale for $2. Now, I don't know what's up with the person who's selling their free Bible for $2, but, that person needs the Bible, needs a bunch of them can have a business, right? No, but we were over on the north side visiting one time, me, Caleb, Joe, and some others, so we were giving away these little Bibles, and anyway, so we just gave some away, and I think Caleb and Joe were coming around, and there was a guy over there, and he was trying to sell the Bibles. We just gave him the Bibles. We were the ones giving the Bibles out. They were trying to sell the Bibles for $5 each. And so I just, it's. I guess we're supporting some people's income. I don't know, but it was just funny to hear that somebody would actually say out loud they don't like giving away Bibles. Hey, someone donated $100,000 for Bibles. I say give them away, right? That's what they want to do with it. That's going to help the country a lot more than some other things. And so I'm thankful, and we've got 100 of them. We got the boxes back there. We're going to give some prizes for VBS. Of course, if somebody gets saved at church or VBS, we'll give them one. And then we're going to get some to the prison. And then, like I said, we'll go ahead and, like I said, we just need to pray for folks to get saved and give them two. That's a blessing right there. But we definitely need to pray for Paul and Pam, Cody and Evan. And I am thankful that the pregnancy went well. We take for granted in this world that everything's going to work out, and it did work out, and that's a blessing. I look at my 4 kids and I say, there could have been so many problems that didn't happen. We just think, everything's going to work out at the hospital. It's not always the case, and so we can be thankful everything did go well. And we also just need to be thankful that, we get to, be a part of a country that honestly has places like that. I know sometimes it gets difficult with all the politics and things, but we still have some good hospitals and good people to take care of things, and so that's a blessing. But pray for Vacation Bible School. We do know, I guess I'll tell my kids this, Mamaw is supposed to come up here, so Mamaw will be teaching the class, all right? So, and she will bring the Black Mamba. Okay? Just think that's the paddle, okay? And so she can use that on Heath, right? The Black Mamba. It is a wild safari theme, so Black Mamba would fit in perfectly, right? But so she's going to be here. The twins will probably be here, but Brother Kent will tell them that probably Monday morning of VBS. Okay? That's how it takes them a while to answer. He told me I could date Ruth on the morning I was going to marry her. So, no. But anyway, so it kind of gets late on the answers. But so that'll help on some stuff. And we do have our lessons up here. We've got the pictures, and I text that out about the different days. But we've got these picture cards and stuff like that. And we'll talk to you a little more about that today. But looking forward to it, and we're gonna pray in some rain. Right? Let's pray in a little bit of rain. I wouldn't mind if every day of VBS it was raining at 80 degrees. I would be fine with that. It wouldn't be a problem. And so, but if you can't get it to rain, at least pray in 80 degrees. That would at least help. Just a little bit. Miss Lorna, is it greener here than in yellow? Yeah. That's what Ruth's telling me. She says it's like dirt up there, and so needless to say, we're doing better than we think, but we still need something to come in this week for sure, but we're going to turn the dirt out here. This yard is pretty good shape. I've been mowing it high, but it's eventually going to totally be dead. We just need to pray for that. Just pray for some folks to get saved at VBS, right? That's what we're doing it for, and we want to see that. So let's go ahead and let's pray, and then we'll take our offering, and then we're going to go to our Sunday school classes. But Father, I love you, and God, I pray this morning for Brother Paul and his family, the rest of the family, Lord, for Bud and just to comfort them, be with them, and God just to help in a special way. I do pray for Brother Cody in his heaven, Lord, just to continue to just help there. And Lord, I just thank you for everything going well. I do pray, Lord, that we be able to give these Bibles out to some folks that get saved, and we see it just reap benefits years down the line, Lord. And also just pray that you would be with this morning's services, Lord. And God, just thank you that we have a place to have church. Lord, that we have air conditioning, that we have just our needs met. What a privilege it is to have that. And God, I thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's have Cade, Brother Heath, come up for the offering. He's happy because I finally asked my neighbor if we could fish in his pond, and he said we could. So he just wants to get out of church to just run over to the pond, guys. So it's all right. If I catch a bigger fish than you, you owe me $5. That's the deal. Okay. All right. If you catch a bigger fish than me, then I'll take $5 off what you owe me for all the food I've had you all the years. Okay. I'll take it off your bill, right? No. All right. Are you excited about having a big sister? Pretty excited. Okay. Are you going to be nice to her? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Are you going to be ready for all the pink stuff in the house and all the girl stuff? Not really. You know, when she gets a little older, she's going to want to watch certain cartoons that y'all are not going to want to watch. It's going to be tough. Heath has to deal with it all the time. He's in there watching Barbie Adventure and stuff like that. You know, it's tough, isn't it? Yeah. And I downloaded some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the girls are just like, I don't want to watch that junk. You know, they just don't want to watch no Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? So, but you'll be all right. You'll be all right. You'll make it right. You'll make it. So let's go ahead. Brother Heath, why don't you pray for the offering?
God, thank you for everyone being here, and thank you for Evan Joneswell, and for Aaron Paul, and then whenever they unplug the machine for him to be ready for anything. And God, just so it's going to stay safe. We love you, God.
But I helped to move the log a little bit, that he's going to take the base and all that, he's going to go put in our burn pile. So you might hear a big tractor driving through here sometime this morning, but it's just good to be at church. We're going to be in the book of 1 Kings this morning. 1 Kings chapter 17. We'll turn there. And we're going to start on verse 2. And this morning in our afternoon service, we're going to talk a little bit about Elijah. And of course, we're going to be in Joshua chapter 12 for church. We've been trying to go through Joshua about halfway done with the book at this point. VBS is going to be about Daniel, and sometimes it's just good to remind yourself of all the great stories in the book of Daniel, and those type things just help us in life because I feel like it's good for kids to learn how to be a good Christian in the world we live in today. It's a different world than we grew up in. You know, me and Matt, we're close same age, right? I guess. I mean, close. You don't want to admit close, and we grew up at a different time. Just you go before really people had cell phones and internet, and all the stuff they have today. Things have changed, and going through learning about some of the men of God in the Bible help you kind of handle some things and help our kids handle some things. But he'll go to verse 2 of 1 Kings 17. If you'll stand and respect God's word, I'm just going to read there to verse 7. It says, "And the word of the Lord came upon him, saying, Get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan. And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook. And I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So he went and did according unto the word of the Lord. For he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread, flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. And it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land." God, we love you. We just ask that you help and show us some things this morning now. In Jesus' name, amen. And of course, I know you may be seated. We're talking about the no rain. We're kind of seeing that. Everybody remember 2011 when we had no rain? That was a year of a pretty bad drought, really bad drought, actually, all over Arkansas and other states. Just, I mean, it was pretty bad. I remember, there was no grass. Everything was pretty much dead. And I mean, as far as for farmers, it was not a good time. But I want to talk about this story a little bit. First, I want to talk about Elijah. And what's funny is when you start in verse 1, it just says, "And Elijah the Tishbite, who was the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab." And so you get into this. Here's what's funny is when you read about Elijah, he just kind of comes out of nowhere. Just this guy shows up. And the reason I want to bring that up is because sometimes here's what God does. Sometimes God will there'll be someone God's working on kind of behind the scenes. And in the Bible, you see it all the time. You don't hear about him. Nobody's talking about him. Nobody knows what he's doing. And then all of a sudden, here's Elijah the Tishbite. And then, it's kind of a big deal after you get to this point and they start going on, the stuff Elijah does, and even the way Elijah's life ends, it's all amazing. But before that, it's like, where is this guy from? What's he do? Who is he? And we really don't know. We don't know much about him. They don't tell us. We just know that he showed up and here's this prophet. And the reason that's important is because sometimes in life, that's kind of how God does things. God may be working on you for years, and you may just kind of be stewing on it. And God may not just give you this big plan to do, but you may just be going. And then God may use you specifically in a certain time. You think about someone like Noah and how God just came in there, and then Noah was going to save the world, basically. And there's just instances of that. And, no man, however spiritual, can understand everything the Lord's trying to do. There's a lot of stuff the Lord keeps from us. It's easy. How many of y'all ever look at the world, you look at things, and you go, I don't know, I think it'd be nice if it was a little different. It'd be nice if it was done a little different. We have a tendency to do that. Any of y'all go to a restaurant and you're like, they should run this restaurant different. I can tell them how to run it, right? You go to Sonic and you go, I need to have a talk with Jason, right? And whatever it is, and you just think, hey, I could do this. I could run this church. I could run that. You watch somebody do something, you're just like, always have these thoughts and these things. Now, to look at planet Earth and see what God's doing, it's easy to say, I'd do it different. But the thing is, you don't know everything God knows. You don't have all the information. There's been times when I've thought things and I look back and I go, wow, I was way off. Way off. That's not how it should have been done. The way I thought it should have been done was probably the worst way, and God kind of worked things a different way, and I could have never known. I would have never figured that out. So, and the truth is, you're going to have to understand that pretty much most of the time, if you're following a path of God, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be confusing to your mind. God, if you look in the Bible, every time he's doing something, it seems really odd if you would put yourself in the perspective of it. Especially this story, because in this story we see that you got this guy who just shows up, and now all of a sudden he's got to tell a king that it's not going to rain for 3.5 years. And that's kind of a weird thing to just come tell a king. You know, imagine if you just tried to get conversation with the president of the United States, like get a conversation with Joe Biden, and or whoever the president really is. But and you get a conversation with them, and then they forget you talked to them the next day. But anyways, and you say, hey, there's going to be a drought for 3.5 years. Well, just the fact that they even believe you would be amazing, right? Obviously, at some point they were going to believe you once it started to be a drought, right? But sometimes God's ways can be kind of they just don't make sense. It's not that God's trying to confuse us, right? God's not the author of confusion. That's not what he's trying to do. He really is telling you that you shouldn't be confused when I'm doing my work. You should just trust me and let me do it. If you ever watch somebody, like, let's say you're not a mechanic, and you watch the mechanic working, you might be a little confused about what they're doing. But they know what they're doing, and it's going to work. Lisa's water heater, well, the guy turned the pilot off the other day, it wouldn't come back on. I couldn't get it back on, so I called Jason, and he, for some reason, knew everything about water heaters, and so I went and bought a part. I went over there with him. We started to work on it, and I was just there. I was just there to buy the part and to let him in, and then to hand him tools, right? So I was handing him the tools and things, and I was watching him, and he was just taking stuff off here and all this, seeping gas out and everything. I was like, yeah, this is good. We're gonna blow up, And I wasn't really sure what he was doing, and I was just kind of watching it and stuff and everything, and then here in a little bit, boom, it was working, right? And that's kind of how God does sometimes. God starts doing some things, and you're like, God, what are you doing? Like, this doesn't seem like a good thing to do. This doesn't seem like the right thing to do. It's easy in life sometimes to just kind of question that. So you've got this man, Elijah. He's kind of from nowhere. I mean, he's a Tishbite. Does anybody know who a Tishbite is, right? But he's just kind of a nobody, and then all of a sudden he comes on the scene. And then you've got this brook, right? There's this brook, and so he speaks to Ahab, says there's going to be no rain, dew, and all that. Now, we know how this feels, right? Because we're seeing it. Like this morning, there really wasn't any dew. Some mornings I've been seeing some dew, and that's been nice. But I didn't really notice much dew this morning. And here we are. They're still saying it could be in the hundreds this week. When it's 100 degrees and the wind's blowing, it's just like a furnace, right? It's just hot. And it's just drying things out. And that's been going across the state, and we're seeing stuff like that. And, we know the end result of it. Like, why is it so bad to have a drought, right? Well, you understand, if you know anything about the world, that the reason it's bad is because everything we have depends on that greenery, right? We need it. For one thing is, we need cheeseburgers, amen? Right? And you're not going to get a cheeseburger without cows, right? So you're not going to have cows if you don't have grass. And so you say, well, we got some hay. Yeah, probably not enough hay. And so you got to feed hay, you got to feed feed, it costs more money. And, all these things can add up. And could it be a bad enough drought that a lot of farmers would lose everything? Absolutely, right? If it was long enough, that's what would happen. Who thinks 3.5 years is a long time to have a drought? That's a pretty long time. We're like, man, if we got 3 months of drought, we're like, oh, we're going to die. 3.5 years? You start losing hope, right? We start looking like Arizona, right? That's what would happen over here. It would just be all dirt, and there'd just be little, the things in Westerns, where there's tumbleweeds everywhere, and stuff like that. It's kind of how I feel when I mowed Old Washington this last time, because it's all sand over there, and it was like I was mowing on a beach with little weeds, growing out of it, And I'll just tell you, so there's this brook. Everything's dead, right, at this point. Everything's dying. And by the way, Elijah had to go through all of it. Like he wasn't left out of it. It's funny because he's preaching about this thing that God was going to do, this judgment, but he had to go through the judgment. And I don't want you to forget that. You know, you can get up and I can get up and preach about, hey, America, and this is going to happen, but I'll have to go through it too. I'm going to be a part of it. And the truth is, that's what's happening here. Elijah's talking about this judgment, but God's going to make him be in the middle of it too. I mean, just because you say, well, not really, because he had the brook. Really, is that what you want to depend on, is a brook? When everything's drying up, but he wasn't depending on the brook, he was depending on God, right? And the truth is, our society is taking a turn against God. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. I'm not trying to be negative, but the more you go down, the younger you go down, you'll find this, that younger people think God's a joke. They really do. In fact, they make jokes about God. They make jokes about Jesus. You know, they make memes making fun of preachers, making fun of Christians, making fun of people that want to live that way. I mean, just to be a regular, normal Christian today, they're like, man, you're Amish, right? I mean, you're like an Amish person. Why? Well, because you go to church, man. That's a very Amish thing to do, right? No, it's not really that Amish, okay? But that's what they're acting like, and you're seeing more of that, where it's just a joke, right? Like a Bible is just something that, I mean, think about it this way. How many of you, when you were a kid, just remember, you know, maybe seeing your parents with a Bible or something like that? I mean, you just see them with a Bible. It's a pretty normal thing. You know, Dr. Swinner, Noah Swinner's dad, who passed away just a while back, you know, he said back when they would go and invite people to church and try to win somebody to the Lord, when he was doing it back in the 70s, he said, you didn't bring a Bible with you. Here's what you did. You just knocked on a door and you said, hey, I'm from such and such a church. If you die today, you know, you go to heaven. And they're like, well, I'm not sure. And he said, well, could I show you out of the Bible how to get saved? And they say, yeah, I'd like that. And then he'd say, well, then bring me your Bible and I'll show you. And he said everybody had a Bible. Right? And they'd go get the Bible and bring it to him every time. But that's not something you could do today, right? I mean, it was just natural to have a Bible. And so people would just bring their own Bible to let the Lord out of. And we're just seeing a time where there's more doubt about the Bible. You see more young people, they're become Rhodes Scholars now, and they read, you know, a post about somebody who, and by the way, this person's not opinionated at all. They just hate the church and they hate Christians, but they're going to tell you how the Bible's fake, right? And it's really just about faith, right? There's two options. There's a God, there's not a God. That's it. You need to make your mind up. There's either a God or there's not a God. You need to make your mind up. And I mean, you know what? If I believed for 1 second there wasn't a God, I don't think I'd take a lot of time fighting Christians and fighting people. I mean, I would just go live my life, right? But there's a lot out there. For some reason, inside their heart, they know there's a God. That's why they're fighting so much about it. That's why they're so angry about it. But I want to tell you, so we're living in a crazy time, and we're going through this. And Elijah, you know, I'm sure he thought maybe somehow in his mind, I don't know if he would have known about Samson, the story of Samson. But in the story of Samson, of course, at the end of things, Samson had to kill himself to do God's will, to kill the Philistines because of all the mess up he did. And I'm sure as Elijah was sitting there and he said, there's going to be a drought, no rain for this time. And there's probably a part of him thinking, am I going to have to die for this? You know, am I going to have to wither away and die for this prophecy that I just gave, that the Lord gave me? He may have been thinking that. I don't know. But there was stuff, you know, what's going on in America, for instance. I mean, do you think there's a moral downturn in America? Like here's a real big sign America's in trouble. And the big sign is this: morally, when it comes to sex means nothing to people today. That's sad. Biblically speaking, that's not how it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to mean something. There's supposed to be something about that God brings that up, and He talks about stuff like that. And He's very clear that you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. But today, it's just a joke, right? It's just a joke. And sadly, it's like people are living to be animals, is what it's come down to. So he said we face a lot of things, but the Bible says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not into his own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, he will direct thy paths, right? That's a simple verse. Ever heard that before, trust in the Lord? But it's a lot harder to do. Right? Just ask someone and say, you know what? Here's a prescription to help you out. Put your phone away for a while. I make it a point to just you say, well, I need my phone emergency, whatever. Okay, it's fine. Just don't look at it all day unless somebody calls you. Right? Or you get a text or something like that. Just don't look up anything, don't read anything. Just stick it in your pocket. You get a text, answer the text. You get a call, answer the call. Use it like a phone, right? Like it used to be. Try that for about a week. I think you'll think a lot differently. You'll be mentally better. You really will. And you say, that's so Amish. I didn't say get rid of your phone, right? I didn't say you couldn't have your phone. I'm just saying sometimes you'll find out that the devil is just keeping you preoccupied with a bunch of stuff that's messing you up. Right? You say, where do you get that in the story? Well, God just threw Elijah over by this brook. He said, go there. And he's just isolated. I mean, he couldn't get any news. Nobody knew where he was. He couldn't have any human companionship. And a lot of times in the Bible, when people, even Paul, before he started his ministry, it's like a really short verse in the Bible. It just talks about how for 3.5 years he was in the desert by himself. That's a long time to be by yourself, but he was. And he just went there by himself. And I'll tell you, sometimes you just need to not have any form of communication. Glenn, do you remember when you drive pretty far and you had no phone? You just had to trust that it would work out. I hope my motor didn't blow up. I mean, people used to do that. My dad would take us all over the place in a truck that probably shouldn't be running, and we would go all over Arkansas and out in the middle of nowhere. We never had a phone. Remember one time my dad said, "Hey, there's a good pond. We'll go fish at this pond. It's a great pond." And this thing was like 3 hours away from our house, like way up. He used to drive a feed mill truck, so he knew where all these farms were, and they let him fish on these ponds, and he knew of this pond. I don't remember if we caught any fish there. I don't remember at all. All I remember is we get there, we're fishing, we look at the truck, and it's just leaned over a lot, because he had big mud tires, like 33s on or something. And one of the tires was flat, so we go over there. We look at it. There's a file, like an old rusty file, just stuck in there. Just a huge problem. So we have a spare tire, but it's real little, and it's rigged up in the truck, really hard to get. He had a camper on there, so we get in there and we finally get that. It's flat, So, but we did have a handy bicycle pump. So we're just like the flat tire. We're just bicycling, pumping it. So I don't know if we caught any fish. But we were so far out in the middle of nowhere, there weren't people to be seen for miles, So we finally got it on there and everything, driving crooked, and we found a tire shop after about an hour or so. And the guy said, I can't fix that. And he said, oh, you're going to try. Just put some kind of patch in there and just see what happens, And he drove it for many years with that patch, let me tell you. But I'll tell you, we didn't have a backup plan. We were just out there, And, I kind of miss that, right? It's kind of fun to just, you say, let it be ignorant. You need to have a cell phone. What I'm telling you is, we rely on a cell phone too much. Like, if you're reading the Bible and you need to know something from God, don't Google it. Just ask God. That'd be better, right? People used to do that, right? Curtis Hudson, he was pastoring a small church, and at the time, he didn't know much. He worked for the post office, and, he's when he started, he was one of the directors of Sword of the Lord after John R. Rice, but, he didn't know much, and he went to a conference about soul winning, and he just started going out and telling people how to get saved and all that, and he said, I must have did something wrong, the Lord grew the church, people got saved. He said, but all I used was my Bible. I just preached my Bible. And I didn't read any other books. I just used the Bible. That's what the old men taught me to do, is just read the Bible. And he said, so I I didn't know, you know, and he said, I just kept reading the Bible, and God bless. As people used to do that, but now we're just like, well, we gotta find this and find that and find that. Why don't you let God speak to you sometimes? You know, most of our minds are polluted with a bunch of people's opinions. Just, we've heard all these opinions. Your mama told you this, your daddy told you this, your brother told you this, you know, some guy on TV told you this, some guy on a blog told you this, somebody, and so you don't even know what you're talking about, right? I mean, it's just confusing. It's just like a buffet of different opinions that are all different. And you know what? Sometimes it'd be good to just do a cleansing and say, you know, have you ever did a cleansing like, you know, a food cleansing? They're not fun, okay? I did a gallbladder cleanse one time. Not fun, okay? But I don't know if it worked, but I still got my gallbladder, okay? And so I'm just saying, it involves Epsom salt and, what is it, olive oil? And lemon juice. Yeah, good stuff right there, okay? You know, you cleanse anything if you eat that kind of stuff, let me tell you. There'll be nothing left. And, you know, it's either that or Taco Bell. No, but I'm just saying, we just got to be, sometimes we just need our mind to not be so polluted. Like, how many of y'all can predict, if you go to Fox News, you can predict what they're going to say. And if you go to CNN, you can predict what they're going to say, right? And then if you really, then you're like, you know, I'm just going to spend the whole day cleansing myself. I'll just listen to Glenn Beck all day, okay? I mean, and then you're really going to be like, whoa, you know. I mean, that's just what we do sometimes. And sometimes we need to step back and say, let me just, like, think for myself a little bit, talk to God a little bit. And so, Elijah, why don't you go hang out somewhere by yourself for a long time? And he wasn't by himself, right? God was there. And that's the big deal about it. Trust in the Lord with all the heart. And so it says, and the word of the Lord came. When you read about what's going on, it says, and the word of the Lord came unto him, saying. And it told him what to do. You know, that phrase in the Bible is in the Bible just a bunch of different occasions, but for different things and different people, it says that to it. Just in that exact way, the word of the Lord came. And I'll tell you something. We need to realize that over the course of history, God has spoken to people over and over again, trying to give them some information. And let's just be honest. We have a hard time hearing Him now. We have a hard time hearing Him now. How many of you would honestly be like, if, and I know this is true with kids, okay? This is definitely with kids. You try to take a kid's cell phone away, they go into like some kind of shock or something. That's my cell phone. It's my friend. That's my, whatever. It's just like, you're weird, okay? But anyways, I'm just saying, but all I remember doing growing up is just being outside. It was just like a big blur. Like what did you do when you were a kid? I was just outside all the time. That's all I remember. I was climbing around in our barn, or I was fishing, or I was climbing in the woods by our house, finding old bottles that I take down to the store and sell so I could get some bubble gum. That's all I remember. I was just catching stuff I shouldn't catch and bringing it home. My dad made me kill it, like snakes. And I mean, that's all I remember growing up. We didn't have air conditioning until I was 12, so I wasn't going to stay in the house, right? So I remember me and my cousin Clint, Beaver Fork Creek was just right down the road. So we were always at Beaver Fork Creek. I don't even know if we ever caught any fish, but we were down there fishing. And we caught snakes a lot down there, I know that. We catch frogs. But I don't remember, I didn't get bit until I was much older in life with the snake situation, okay? But I met a guy the other day that said he had a pet copperhead. And we were fishing yesterday, actually. We got said for a while he had a pet copperhead. I said, you're kidding me, right? And he's like, no, I mean, it was nice. I had a pet copperhead. I said, you don't have any more than you, because I'll come kill it for you, okay? And, but he really did. We were fishing somewhere, and this guy was chatting with us about his fishing adventures and how he got about a 100-pound snapping turtle one time. He said, I just thought it was on the log, and I was just like, I'm trying to get it out, He said, I kept pulling, and that thing just floated up. It's on the log. That's what I'm right? But I'll tell you what, we need to just step back sometimes and say, I'm going to put everything else away. I'm going to get a Bible. I'm just going to talk to God. Just going to talk to God. I'm going to forget the news and forget the streaming platform or whatever you're wanting to go through, right? And the word of the Lord came. To Abraham, the word of the Lord came and told him, leave all your family and leave everybody, and you're going to go where I tell you to go. Right? The word of the Lord came to many of the prophets. You go read through the different prophets in the Old Testament. The word of the Lord came. The word of the Lord came to many of the kings in the Bible. The word of the Lord would come to the kings and tell them what to do. The word of the Lord came to many times just showing visions of what God was going to do. The word of the Lord came to Moses about him being the deliverer of Israel. The word of the Lord came to Joshua to go forward after Moses. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah when he was in prison. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel when he was among the captives. And, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, remember, about Nineveh. So here's Elijah, the word of the Lord came. I'm wondering, when's the last time you had the word of the Lord? When's the last time God talked to you? I think anybody who gets saved, the word of the Lord comes to them and they get saved. That's how they get saved. I think that there's preaching, and I think the Lord is like, hey, Ruth, you need to get saved. And they go, yeah, right? And then they're obedient to it. But I think after that, there's other times the word of the Lord comes to you. The word of the Lord came to me whenever I knew I needed to be a preacher. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on the altar. I was in Mexico. And, it was about a room about this big. It was full of people. Most of them spoke Spanish, except me. Brother Eddie was preaching, and David Abbott was translating into Spanish. I remember coming to the altar and said, Lord, what will I have me to do? Just like the Apostle Paul. That's what Brother Eddie was preaching on. I said, Lord, what will I have me to do? And it was just like God told me, you need to be a preacher. And it wasn't like I heard him talking. It was just like I knew I need to be a preacher. And I came to Brother Eddie that night. I said, Brother Eddie, the Lord just told me I need to be a preacher. He's like, you need to be a preacher. And he got me right on that. He said, Sunday night we get back from Mexico, be ready. You need to preach. And so I was ready. I had about 80 verses in my sermon. Okay, none of them actually went with each other or anything, but it's like you can't go wrong with 80 verses. One of them, I got to be right. Something's got to be right to read all 80 of them. I'll tell you something. Here's the thing: the word of the Lord came, but sometimes when the word of the Lord comes, He tells you something that maybe is not something you want to do. And He said, "Get thee to Cherith," right? He told him to go to Cherith. Now, that name, if you look at the meaning of that name, it means to be cut off or to be cut down. That's what the name Cherith means. So, and it could be more true, right? He was cut off from everybody. He had to be cut off completely from everybody. I was thinking about this sermon as I was fishing with Keith yesterday, because we've been fishing in this little creek, and there's literally it's so little. It's like about 4 of these pews, and wide, and then it's about as wide as this auditorium, and then it's about 4. It's a little bit spot. The rest of it's dried up. But, there's some gar in there, and there's some different things. And so we're fishing there, and then a guy just shows up. He pulls down there, and he starts talking to us. I'm like, hey, I thought we were off the beaten path. Nobody goes to this creek, right? He goes, yeah, I was just down where this creek over at Guernsey comes across. He said I was down there fishing, and I thought, and he was trying to come because there's a pond in that field, too. And he was trying to find a different way to get there, And, you feel like you're cut off down there, but somebody showed up. Where Elijah was, nobody was showing up. He was at Cherith, and he was cut off from Ahab, Jezebel, and all the nation of Israel, and all the things that later we'll see him being involved with. And the thing is, when we think about Elijah, and we just think about, it says he was down there, and the truth is, I don't know if Elijah would have ever went to Cherith if there wasn't something like the drought. Does that make sense? it was kind of like, I want you to think about this for a second. We think the drought was to change Ahab. It didn't work that good, by the way. Ahab didn't change much, did he? Ahab still was wicked. Jezebel was still wicked. She still wanted to kill him. After all the great stuff that happens after the drought, and after the there being the fire from heaven, all this stuff that happened, guess what? It didn't really fix Ahab or Jezebel. It really didn't do it. Now, there were some other folks that got saved in that situation, but the thing is, maybe the drought was just for Elijah. You ever thought about that? A drought of a whole nation, just so he would go spend time at charity. You know, sometimes you got to understand, sometimes God will just turn the whole world around to reach you, to get your attention. Have you ever met somebody that was in trouble and they needed help, but you couldn't get their attention? You couldn't get their attention, no matter what you did. You could shake them, you could scream at them, you could love them, you could hug them, you could give to them, you could take away from them. Nothing you did got their attention. They just kept doing what was messing them up. Right? And so sometimes God just says, hey, you know what? If you ain't got no water, and I tell you the only place that has water, I bet you'll go hang out there. And Elijah sure enough did. And maybe the whole thing was just for Elijah. I mean, Elijah's one of the few people that didn't have to die tonight, you know? I mean, he got to ride out in the chariot, right? I mean, what a blessing that was. And I want to tell you something. We need to understand that sometimes God has a place for you to go because you're dealing with something, and the only way you're going to fix it is you got to be alone. You got to deal with it alone. You got to get away from everything and just deal with it alone. You know, they say the best way if you have a rebellious kid, the best way to fix a rebellious kid is to get them away from everybody. To take them somewhere where there's nobody they know. And spend time with them and get them away. Right? You know, I heard a preacher one time, I mean, he was having trouble with his kid, and what he did to save his kid, and it worked, is, I mean, he just, this preacher pastored the church, he resigned from pastoring the church, he moved off into the country somewhere, where they didn't know anybody from at all, and moved out somewhere, and they just spent time together. It was just them. And God turned it around, and everything turned out good because he just got away from things. You know, sometimes the reason you can't get over your bitterness is because you just need to be alone for a while. You need God to put you at a chair, right, where you can just think about it a little bit. Don't ask everybody's opinion anymore. Just go pray about it. And God's going to let you know that bitterness ain't doing you any good. Or maybe you're dealing with something, that you just can't understand. And, maybe you're doubting or whatever, and you're just running out of choices and you feel disappointed. Whatever it is, sometimes you just need a place to be alone. Really alone. You know, a lot of people today, they'll say, yeah, I spend a lot of time alone. No, you don't. If you're on your phone, you're not alone. That's not the same thing. Right? That'd be like telling a prisoner, we're going to put you in isolation and then give them a cell phone with everything. That's not being alone. Right? Being alone means being alone. Right? Have you ever, have you ever been out in the woods somewhere at night and you're alone? But you know you're not alone because you can hear everything. Right? Everything's pretty. You hear every movement of the leaves, and you hear every animal making noises, And, we were fishing yesterday, and all the cicadas, they were just so loud. They just wouldn't shut up, And I could keep remembering, copperheads like to eat those, by the way. You know that? So where there's a lot of those, there might be a copperhead somewhere nearby, okay? And so we're just like, yeah, quit fishing there. But don't worry, I'm going to bring some of my weed killer and get us a better path next time I go, okay? But I want to tell you something. If you would just get alone, Cherith is a place that God can really speak to you. It may not have been what Elijah expected, but it was what he needed. And, you may find out while you're alone, you may find out, and I know you don't believe this, but you could have some problems you need to deal with. There might be some hatred. There might be some issues in your heart that you need to fix. And you may find it when you're alone. But here's the thing. While all this drought's going on, they start looking for Elijah, if you remember. Ahab wants to find him at some point because it's like, this guy told me that it was going to do this. Where's he at? You know, of course, he's out by the brook Cherith, and they don't know that. And so he's out there and all that. And, you know, the truth is, people don't even realize how bad they need a preacher. You know, Glenn, just think about back in the day, was it more prevalent for people to have a pastor? You know, I think it was more prevalent. Kind of like people used to have family doctors. They had a pastor. That was just normal. You had your family doctor. I had a family doctor. He had some fun with us, right? Okay, we had he had some good stories about me being a doctor. He really did, about when I swallowed the penny and we had to do an X-ray, all this stuff. But I'll tell you, we had a family doctor, right? But we used to have a pastor. You know, this pastor was our family pastor. You know, he was going to preach the funerals. He was going to do the weddings and stuff. You know how many people today, like when they want to get married, they can't find a preacher? They don't even know anybody that's a preacher, right? I mean, or a funeral, for that matter. They don't have a preacher that knows them. The preacher's got to get up and preach a funeral for somebody they didn't know. There's nothing more horrible than to have to preach a funeral for a person you didn't know. I mean, you want to know the person. You know, I preach funerals of people I know, and there's something special about that. There's something special about the fact that we knew each other. I knew their salvation testimony. I knew a lot of stuff about them. But, you know, people need to understand that, you know, the less preachers we have, we're in trouble. If you go look out there, there's a lot of churches need preachers. Because I can show you Facebook pages of churches looking for preachers. And there's all kinds of churches across Arkansas. They need a preacher. They need a preacher. They need a preacher. They don't have a pastor anymore. And I'll tell you, people used to have one. Israel had no clue how bad they needed Elijah. They needed him very badly, and how important it was for him to be there. So they didn't have him at that time. He was hiding there. But what I want to finish with is simply this. What I find interesting is the Bible says that ravens came and brought him food. Now, the truth is, if you read about this in the Bible, in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, ravens were considered like an unclean animal. They were a dirty animal as far as the Bible is concerned. But these things were going to feed him. So here he is, he's isolated and confused. And all of a sudden these birds come to bring him food. And you know what's funny about God is he'll do stuff like this. He's done this. Like I said, God will do weird stuff like this. Something will be going on, and someone will come by and they'll say, hey, I want to give you $100,000 so you can give out Bibles. You know? Or someone will come along, and we get to be recipients of that. And we got 100 Bibles. They're about $30 a piece. So I'm telling you, we couldn't have went and bought those. And we're able to reach some people here with Bibles, right? And I want to tell you, God just does stuff like that. There's so many strange stories. I can tell you time and time again where God provided, and He didn't bring it in the way I thought He was. And He didn't bring it in the source that I thought He was. You know, it's really interesting how sometimes God does that. Sometimes God will use things like a closed door to actually lead to something better, right? Or just, even someone can lose their job and it can actually end up being a blessing, but they don't think it's a blessing when it happens. God provides in weird ways. It could be dead ends. You try all these other things. By the way, a lot of people are in trouble because what they're doing is they just go into dead end after dead end, and they don't understand that God may be using one of those dead ends to lead them exactly where they should be and what they should do. So this bird comes in there, but I want to tell you this. Ravens were a miracle, right? He fed them with the ravens. But that brook didn't dry up while he was there. The whole time he was there, it didn't dry up. Later it dries up. And when it does, he goes, remember, he meets the widow. But you know what's interesting is when he meets the widow, she perceived that he was a man of God. She said that. And what's funny is we didn't know much about him before that, but after him spending all that time with that God feeding him and him being alone, all of a sudden it is obvious he was a man of God, right? Something changed in his life. But the ravens were a miracle. He didn't ask God, hey, bring me food by the ravens. But you know what the other thing is? We often think the water was a miracle. But the water was not just a miracle, but it was obedience. God told him to go there and it stayed. If he'd have never went there, he never would have gotten the... You know how many people probably died during this drought that they don't talk about in the Bible? How many people starved and died? But God protected Elijah because he obeyed and went to where he was supposed to be. And sometimes in your life, the reason you're not hearing from God, the reason you're not growing in the Lord is you're just not being obedient. He said, just do what I already told you to do. And watch some blessings show up. Right? You already know what you're supposed to do. How many Christians would say, I pretty much know what I'm supposed to do? And they say, I pretty much don't do all that I know that I'm supposed to do. I mean, that's how we live. And listen, the blessing's just this far away. All the things you know to do, start doing them. The more you do, the more you'll see the blessings. But until you decide, I'm going to do that, we're looking for an easy way out. Give me a pill, right? Just give me a pill that makes everything better. Well, there's not a pill, but there is a book. And the book, though, there's one requirement of the book: you have to follow it. And guess what stubborn, prideful people don't want to do? They don't want to follow directions. Right? They've got a better plan. Now I'm going to tell you what, there's no better plan. If God says go to the brook, go to the brook. And he'll feed you there. Right? Let's pray. God, I love you. Thank you so much for providing for us. I remember moving here, God, and just so many times things looked questionable or things looked tough, and somehow you just came in and you provided again and again. So many ways. I don't know if I could even write a book and just really tell everything you provided for. There's so many I probably miss. You'd show up in times of need and just come through in so many ways. And I just pray that, Lord, you'd help me obey you. I love seeing those things happen. I love being a part of it. God, I want to see it happen more in the future. I pray, God, you just be with us as we prepare for Vacation Bible School, as we prepare for just reaching some young people, Lord, that you just help and bless now. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you may take a break. Go see if any kids need a spanking.
Line them up.
Every time I come home, I pretty much walk in and say, all right, which one needs a spanking? And usually it's none of them, but I like to keep them on edge, right? I like to keep them thinking they're going to get one, right? How many of you were a little bit scared of your dad growing up?